I believe that the Cardano Foundation recently made a quite crucial reminder in regard to a fundamental aspect of it. And I'll explain what that is in today's video, and I'll even talk about the price later on when it comes to ADA, which is Cardano's native token. But I want to first start off by saying how this is just my perspective. I'm not telling anyone to do anything, and nothing I say is financial advice. So if we take a look at it, the Cardano Foundation recently made a post saying how does the IBC protocol integration between Cardano and Injective actually work. Now I'll explain that to the best of my capabilities. So if we take a look at this right here, we first have to understand why this is so important historically for something like Cardano and why I think they even bothered reminding people about it. Well, it's because Injective is allegedly the first ever chain with a live on-chain IBC connection to Cardano. Now, IBC stands for Inter-Blockchain Communication Protocol. But to understand why this is so important and why this is so arguably crucial for Cardano, we have to take a look at the historical vibe of Injective. We have to take a look at its origin, basically. So, Injective initially started off as something called a Cosmos-based blockchain. However, now it does have an aspect of Ethereum Virtual Machine, or should I say EVM, but nonetheless, initially it did start off with being a Cosmos-based blockchain. Now, Cosmos has something called the Cosmos SDK. SDK stands for Software Development Kit, and that allows basically for application-specific blockchains to be built. Case in point, we've seen something like Injective, of course. Let's take a look at Kronos. Let's take a look at Kava, and even, last but not least, Luna Classic. Yeah, I'm not joking. Now, granted, though, again, there's over 50 Cosmos-based blockchains. So when people say, oh, Luna Classic and all this, again, there's over 50 historically. So yeah, it's not too bad of a resume. But besides that, the glue, so to speak, that connects all of these Cosmos-based blockchains together is something called the Inter-Blockchain Communication Protocol, or should I say the IBC. Now, any blockchain out there that does have IBC enabled can easily, basically, freely interact with any other blockchain that has IBC enabled. So if we take a look at how, in the case of Cardano, showcasing and reminding people about what they've done with Injective lately, I think it's pretty crucial considering how, again, Injective did initially start off as a Cosmos-based blockchain. What this basically does, if I want to put an analogy when it comes to it, is like, let's say, for instance, we just imagine in a pure hypothetical, there's 3 islands, right? Let's say there's an island called Island C, which has no airport, and then there's Island I, and then it has an airport, and then there's Island B, and that has a very massive airport. Let's imagine this. Let's imagine for a second Cardano is Island C. Imagine if there's no airport there. You know, it's kind of isolated, right? What happened recently? Island C, aka Cardano, built an airport that has flights to Island I, in this case hypothetically Injective, and then Island I has connecting flights to the bigger island, which is Island B. You get what I mean, right? It makes Cardano less isolated in a sense. That's just a pure analogy, though. Might not be the most fantastic analogy of all time, but that's just kind of the way to take a look at it, because Cardano is a very massive layer 1 blockchain, but of course, a lot of people oftentimes historically have argued that this is a little bit too isolated. Like, sure, okay, it's massive, but who really cares if it's so isolated? Well, through what they've done recently with Injective, it made it less isolated, right? So something like that is gonna maybe allow Cardano to have better widespread adoption moving forward. People like to say, well, ADA is ranked 15th in the world in terms of market cap. Why does it need better adoption? Well, it's because it's not even top 10 or top 5 as of right now, right? And even massive projects out there, like a Solana, for instance, they're still trying to find ways to improve. So let alone Cardano, they need to find more ways to improve because they're smaller than Solana, as of right now at least. So, you know, it's not a bad thing that they're at least trying, at least in my opinion. So this is a very crucial, I think, somewhat, I guess, occurrence, right, that happened not too long ago, where Cardano did do something alongside Injective, which, again, I get it, Injective is not such a massive project in the grand scheme of things, some people might arguably say, but this is a very crucial, I guess, collaboration of sorts, if I would even want to call it that, when it comes to Cardano and Injective. But besides that point, now I think you kind of understand why I even bothered to talk about this, because at first glance, this may seem very trivial, because keep in mind, this post that Cardano made was a couple days ago, right? But there's only like 9 comments. I'm not joking. So I think that kind of highlights that some people might not view this as such a crucial thing. But the more I take a look at it, the more I understand that, hey, you know what? This actually matters quite a lot. People like to tell me, well, this post was made a couple days ago. Cardano, in terms of its native token called ADA, recovered almost 11% in the past 7 days. Is it because of this? No, I don't think so, right? Like, I think what Cardano did with Injective is more so for the long term. I just want to make this clear. Like, having good fundamentals does not necessarily equal good demand. Good demand happens when there is good demand in the market overall. So when it comes to Cardano, what we're seeing right now when it comes to ADA is because of the demand, right? In terms of the market. ADA is consistently, within the top 20, within the top 30. So of course, naturally, a project like that is pretty difficult to forget about just because it's already so massive historically. And again, when people like to tell me, oh, people forgot about Cardano, I don't necessarily agree with that. Now, if we take a look at it, ADA is still at around 20 cents, by the way. This is still very far from its hypothetical ceiling. I'm not joking. We're talking about a project here that is still around 5 times away than $1, and $1 is only around 33%, or basically a third of its all-time high. So ADA is still very low. Either it goes to $1, I'm going to Sizzler to celebrate, the restaurant, of course. It goes to $2, I'm celebrating a little bit more. It goes to $3, I'm celebrating. But nonetheless, if it just goes back to $1, I have nothing to complain about. We're around 5 times away from that. And really, I'm not trying to become the next Jeff Bezos. I'm not trying to become the next Warren Buffett or whatever. No, that's not my style. So if ADA could just go back to $1, I have nothing to complain about. But of course, having good fundamentals, in my opinion, is very crucial to allow a project to survive for the long haul, right? Because something that is useful doesn't necessarily get forgotten about so easily, in my opinion. So when people like to ask me, why am I so focused on the fundamentals? Well, it's because that's usually what allows a project to survive for the long haul. That's why I'm focused on that, because my mindset is for the long term. I'm willing to wait for years. Do I know exactly when ADA is going to go back to $1? No. But I am dollar cost averaging approximately 12 times a year, so that's approximately once a month. And I'm just holding and waiting in case the market does something. That's kind of it. I'm not telling anyone to do anything though, but I'm just saying, if it just goes to $1, I have nothing to complain about, but that's just, what I'm thinking about as of right now. But regardless, the Cardano Foundation recently making an announcement in regard to what they've done with Injective not that long ago. I thought it was pretty impressive, and I think it showcases the evolution of Cardano, right? It showcases that it's not such a lazy foundation in the case of the Cardano Foundation. It doesn't seem like that to me. Keep in mind, in October, they're planning to go to Singapore. Some of the team members of the Cardano Foundation, they're going to be attending Token 2049, which is a very massive event. So yeah, I just want to say that. But besides that, I'll be sure to make more updates though moving forward. I want to say thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a very wonderful day. It's only the captain.